Yeah, go right to it.
All right, last okay, so we're going to get started about 30 minutes behind schedule, which is on time for me, so thanks for being here. I'm really excited about how many people showed up. Just to introduce myself, for those of you who I haven't met, my name is Tyler. I work for Taos Soil and Water Conservation District, and we're just going to talk about cover cropping, which is one of many healthy soil practices. Before I get started, Will Drimko, the extension agent, is going to make a brief announcement.
Yeah, I just wanted to say welcome everybody. Great to see such a big. I knew it was going to be a big turnout. This is a very popular program. This is the year 4 of this program in Taos County. Wildly successful. How many of you are coming back for this? Repeat customers. Very good. So as Tyler goes through the presentation, remember that this cover crop is a bridge to something else, right? We're using this to bridge to build organic matter in orchards or put in a perennial pasture. Okay, so a lot of these kind of steps that he's going to talk about in terms of what to do with the material once it's grown up, that really does matter in terms of success of future perennial plantings. I know a lot of you already. If you don't know who I am, I'm at the Ag Center. It's MSU Cooperative Extension Service. I did leave a bunch of cards up here. You can grab these. They have my email and myself, my work cell on there. And I can try my best to help you with whatever you got going on. So if you got some kind of weeds going on, or rodent pressure, or fruit trees, or just general questions. Just looking around the room, a lot of people have asked some random questions in my office, and we always try to work together. So that's what we're here for. We have a lot of really good resources here in Taos County. NRCS and soil and water, these kind of cost share programs, as you all know, make a lot of these programs possible. Being able to do it as a cost share. So great to see you all here and doing this kind of work. Thank you.
Happy hour.
Thank you. Oh yes, and if you want to chat more about a variety of things you got going on, please come to Wednesday night's Land Steward Happy Hour. We'll be meeting at Sagebrush at 5:30 p.m. You can have a drink, you can have some dinner, or whatever. Good time to hang out with a lot of the people that are here, with a lot of the people presenting. Good time to bounce ideas off each other. So great event. It's great if you can RSVP, either through TCEDC or Alianza or Taos Valley Acequia Association. Any of those Facebook pages or emails that have information. Hope to see you there on Wednesday. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so we can go to that next slide, please. Just again, to introduce myself, I'm Tyler. Taos Soil and Water. I worked for a little while at TCEDC, which is a great opportunity to get to know some of you through that as well, and that's a great organization, and we're happy they're partnering with us here. My title at Taos Soil and Water is Soil Health Specialist. So that, as funding goes, we tend to be pretty successful at getting the Healthy Soils grants. Like Will said, we've gotten in the last 4 years. I've been participating in that the last couple of years. And that, keeps me pretty busy this time of year, coming out to visit all your sites and helping you get your ground covered in the way that you want it to be. I also, and again, Will's a great source of information, obviously, but I also deal with invasive species, so if you have that problem, I really see them as going pretty hand in hand with cover cropping, amongst other healthy soil practices, so ask me about that too. I'm from North Dakota. I haven't lived in Taos for very long, a couple years, but in some ways the climate is kind of similar. The people aren't very similar. There's a lot better food there. But I'm from where Gabe Brown is, if you've heard about him. He's popularized a lot of really interesting practices. It's an extremely harsh environment up there, and I think it's very useful to learn from that, because this is also a harsh environment, even though it can be really bountiful if people play their cards right. So my background is mostly as a vegetable grower for about 10 years. Over that time period, I evolved and integrated cover cropping more and more over time. It takes a lot of money and resources to do that, but in the end, it paid off for the operations I worked for, and I've seen it pay off for other people too who are looking to make an income from their agricultural practices. So I think it's kind of proven itself. It's always a guessing game about what fits your particular context. So could we go to the next slide, please? So this is me, I think back in 2015 or so. I don't look very happy. I feel kind of stupid showing this picture of me because I don't look that happy. But this is when I was growing in Arizona. This is the first time I grew a cover crop by myself, and I was really excited about it. I worked for other farms, and they were just like, oh, cover cropping is just a waste of time. It's just another expense. We don't want to do that. So I never really had a chance to pursue it working for other people. But then I had a small little market garden in Arizona, about 3,000 feet elevation, in the Verde Valley there, which is ditch irrigated, so they don't call them acequias there, but we were diverting surface water just like a lot of people do here. And you can't really read the numbers on here, but this says I think about $86 down there. And what I bought was about, I think, a half an acre's worth of seed from Green Cover Seed, who supplies most of our cover seed here. So about 25 pounds of seed juice. So including shipping, just shipping it to my farm was about 86 bucks. So that comes up to over $3 a pound, which is really expensive. So one of the things that makes me really excited about our program is that we get tractor trailer loads of seed, and when you do things at scale like that, it really brings down the cost for everybody, and everybody participating in this program really benefits the other people just by doing it kind of collectively. It's like a cooperative thing. When you pool your resources, it ends up being cheaper for everybody. In my case, I was really excited to see this growing like in, I don't know, August or September when it's like 115 degrees at that elevation, and trying to grow cash crops is really challenging, but growing this like diverse mix of cover crops, you just walked by them and you were just happy because the plants were happy. And so that's kind of the outcome we're looking for. It's just, lush, green growing plants. So we can go to the next slide. So again, we got awarded a Healthy Soils grant for the 4th year in a row. As far as I know, the only other folks in the Taos County that got awarded that was the people on the San Cristobal ditch, and they've been doing it for multiple years as well. This is Dean Bruce, who administers the Healthy Soils Program through NMDA, came up and visited last year, and some of the people in this room, we visited your place, and he was really blown away by the enthusiasm, and again, they wouldn't believe that we had this many people here. We didn't take a picture of it or something. There's not this much, as far as I know, enthusiasm for Healthy Soil programming elsewhere in the state. So it's really wonderful to be part of this community. It makes it really fun, and it makes the money keep flowing towards us because they want to put their dollars to good use and see results, and you all are helping provide results for them, and hopefully increasing your own soil health as well. So we can go to the next slide. I guess just one more note on that. You can also apply as an individual for a Healthy Soil Program, and there will be an event coming up in November, I believe, here at TCEDC about that. The application is coming up to start the ball rolling on that. You kind of have to have it all wrapped up by late March. And I think they're going to change the schedule a little bit this year to make it be year-round, which is pretty exciting. But as I mentioned, cover cropping is just one tool that we have. It's not like Will said, it's not an end in itself. It just leads to other things. And so, getting that healthy stand of cover crop is what we're searching for, as outcomes. But then, the journey doesn't end there, because these are just, what we have to look at here. This is just our annual mix that's growing, and they only live like about a year. They might reseed themselves a little bit, but we need to think ahead about what's going to come after them. So aside from cover cropping, so these are things you can get funding for if you apply as an individual. You can get funding for livestock fencing. You can get funding for bale grazing, doing other things, mulching, applying compost, making biochar. The limit on durable goods is about $5,000, so who knows, maybe you could buy a biochar kiln or, X amount of feet of fencing, an energizer, that sort of thing. You can buy bales of hay if you're going to be practicing bale grazing. So I would like to see, more people apply for that because I think that money's there, and I think there would be people who would be really interested in that and would benefit them. So I'm always available for answering questions about that. Speaking of which, if anybody has a question at any point, just throw your hand up and we can talk about it. So we can go to the next slide. All right, so this time around we got about $93,000. We upped our acreage to 280 acres. We got 80 acres of perennial seed, which has all been distributed. Kind of the way we conceive of it now is that it's a 2-year program. Year 1, you plant what we're looking at here in the enchilada tray, and that comes in this bag from Green Cover Seed. These are just a mix of annual plants that survive the winter. We want to get them established in the fall so they start growing, and then they can go dormant and then grow as temperatures kind of rise and provide them a chance to keep on growing. over the winter and into the early spring. So the other 200 acres is, being seeded with our annual seed. So next slide, please. And this is kind of how the money breaks down, just so you know, this is all your tax money, ultimately. So it's just coming back to you. If we start with the biggest pieces of the pie first, this big one is for annual and perennial cover crop seed. That's about $26,000. Actually, the bigger piece of the pie is paying you all $130 an acre to seed that. We also have soil lab testing fees. You pay for me to come out and visit you prior to plant, and then in the spring to see how it grew. We have money set aside for enchiladas. We only get $800 for enchiladas every workshop. So thanks for, again, working together and making sure everybody got it. Yeah, just seed. So aside from seed, which is about $26,000, we spent almost $4,000 on seed inoculants. So I'll focus a fair amount of this presentation on that because I think it's a new thing we're doing this year. It's something I'm really interested in and have a lot of faith in based on previous successes with that. So we'll go to the next slide, please. All right. So usually when I come out and visit your land, I talk to you about, or I ask you, like, what's your goal? People all have all sorts of different goals. And we'll get to those in a second, but from our perspective, our goal is to, Taos One Water covers private land in Taos County, and so our goal is to have 100% of that land covered by green growing plants. I don't think we're ever going to achieve that, but that's our goal. Alejandro Carrillo was here from Mexico, from Chihuahua, Mexico, in this winter. How many people saw him speak? Great, maybe a dozen or so. He's an amazing person, and this program really changes over time because there's people who are doing really, unbelievable things, and as long as we believe, his slide deck and his stories, I think he's telling the truth about his results in Chihuahua, which is a much, even more challenging environment than this one, even less rainfall. So, he talked about transforming his land there into this biblical thing, the land of milk and honey. So, land that could support animals that were producing milk, and also having flowering species that produce, that support pollinators and other beneficial insects. So that's kind of what we're looking for. Step one is, covering all the soils, and then step two, we get a little more picky about what we have right now. And the other goal is just, turning rainfall and snow events into really beneficial events that the soils can hold on to that water rather than shed it. One test I always do with everybody, most everybody, I try to always do it, is an infiltration test. I think it's the most valuable thing to do that mimics like an inch of rainfall that soaks into the water on your ground. That should take less than 10 seconds, Usually it takes closer to 10 minutes. The average is between 3 and 8 minutes. So if we just like think of that visual, anytime it rains or snows, we just want the water to be stored in our soil and supporting growing plants, and that's what we're going for. So yeah, and then over time, increasing the organic matter through breakdown of the cover crop residue or other grazing practices or microbial biomass actually accounts for a huge amount of organic matter percentage in terms of weight. So all those things together, every 1% increase in organic matter, and this shows up on your soil test results, which most everybody gets, accounts for an extra 25,000 gallons of water that's stored in the soil and put to use into making your plants grow bigger, filtering the water, making it cleaner, ultimately affecting our environment, our microclimate of sorts in the greater Taos County to be more supportive of life. All these things build on each other to, allegedly, increase the amount of rainfall if we have more green growing things. And so that's our goal, making Taos County more green. Can we go to the next slide? So there's the infiltration test. That was in like a pretty good looking alfalfa field, but that took probably close to 10 minutes. So, so that's why I like that test. It kind of doesn't lie. Even if it's really wet soil, I've still seen it happen in under 10 seconds in really healthy soils. So we have to ask ourselves, okay, what's not functioning here? Is it the fact that we kind of only have alfalfa growing? Is there a compaction issue of some sort? It could be a number of things. But it kind of clues us into that it's kind of dysfunctional. So next slide, please. All right, other goals. I talk about it in terms of Fernando is here and is a paramedic, and if you're a medical professional, you want to help people that are bleeding out first. It's like triage, So really, what we want, our main goal is helping out the really highly eroded soils that you see driving around. I'm so excited so many people are here today, but it would take me an afternoon or less to find 280 acres of bare dirt that needed it within a 5-mile radius here. So, that's what we're really shooting for. And the exciting thing about all you that participate in this program, is that it really catches on. Your neighbors see it working, and it spreads like something infectious or contagious, but in a good way. So, we accept pretty much anybody that comes to us looking for help. So, in some cases, we're trying to just fill in gaps that are in your, perennial pasture, or, we're just trying to make your soil better through cover cropping. Sometimes it's not the right tool. We'll talk more about that later. But often we can kind of make it work and hopefully benefit you. Through doing this, I think we're just making ourselves more resilient in the face of climate change. So next slide, please. All right. As far as where you're coming from, again, just having an idea of what your goal is. Focusing on what you do want, not what you don't want. And this comes up often with people with invasive weed problems. You kind of have to envision what you're going for, not just I just don't want that here, because something's going to take its place if you remove something unwanted. And so we're trying to replace it with something desirable, beneficial, and perennial. So some people want more hay production. I hear a lot of stories of we used to get X amount of bales from this acreage, now it's this many, and it's decreased over the years. There's some people in this room who want less hay, actually. They don't want all that work to do. But you can still have healthy soils and have less hay production, I think. There's some other, so you just want to think about that, as you're participating in the program, just envisioning what the end result is and what you're going for. And that's going to be different for everybody. Another thing that people often mention is, talking about what it was like when they were growing up here. And I particularly like hearing these stories because it gives us a sense of what's possible, because it happened already. I think it's harder than ever to devote time to irrigating and seeding things and taking care of things, because there's so many things appealing for our attention. But in this community, again, more so than so many other ones, people are still doing that, and that's really important. All right, next slide, please. All right, so New Mexico does have a Healthy Soils Act. That's what funds the money that we can put to use here. So that's a really great thing, and thank goodness for that. Next slide. So here's where we're at now. So about 80 people have applied. 216 acres of seed has been claimed, so we have about 64 acres of seed left. So if anybody in here who hasn't filled out an application yet, I have a stack of them over there. Now's the time to get it. So we require that everybody plant it by October 31st to get their cost share payment and to get their deposit money back. Last year was December 1st. The sooner we get in the ground, the more successful it's going to be. The bigger it's going to grow, the more diverse it's going to be. The later, you can get away with seeding it later, kind of, but we just want to really up the odds of your success and have it be a bigger success than it would be if you were seeding it in November. Next, please. All right, so a lot of you have done this already. You submit an application, I'll come out and look at your land. If you're approved for seeding, we determine how many acres you can seed. You give us a check for $100 per acre of that. That deposit is refundable by doing two things: coming here to an event like this, and seeding the crop by Halloween. We're just mostly talking about seed we have left at this point, so that gets seeded at 75 pounds per acre. We have a list of contractors who have no-till drills. Some people seed it themselves. You can be creative, but only to a certain extent. We don't allow people to just throw seed out there on the ground and not doing anything else. That just feeds the birds, and it doesn't really, it's not going to turn into viable growing plants by and large. I have seen it work on very limited scales, and it's really exciting to see that, yes. But we haven't figured out what the common theme is and what makes that successful. But for now, we kind of require, if you are going to broadcast it, that you incorporate it with a tractor-based implement, because that covers it up with seed and hides it from the birds. and gives it seed-to-soil contact, which is necessary for the seed to grow. And then, once you send me a picture of it getting seeded, by October 31st, then you qualify for the cost share payment of $130 per acre for folks, and we limit everybody to 5 acres. So we asked for more money for the grant this year. It was $110 per acre last year. That had the kind of weird effect of making that income reportable to the IRS because it's over $600 now. So we have one more piece of paper for you to fill out if you do 5 acres, because you'll get $650. And then in the winter, if you're interested in your lab soil test results, I'm happy to talk to you about those, because they're kind of complicated. They require some interpretation. I spent a lot of last winter figuring those out, but they can provide you some insight into what's going on in your soil. And then in the spring, I make a mad dash around the county and see how it all worked out for you. Next slide, please. All right, so that's the application. Copies over there. Next slide. It's pretty simple, just one page. So this is, somebody comes out, we look at your soil, we talk about your goals. Next slide. That's the samples we collect and send off to Nebraska. This is what we get back. So yeah, aside from being illegible here, it kind of is illegible even if you could read it. So this was, I didn't blank out this person's name, maybe it's kind of being anonymous here, but like a lot of people, they're growing grass and alfalfa hay. What we can do is get recommendations. So we're asking for recommendations for 3 tons an acre of grass and alfalfa hay, and then they give you nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, zinc, magnesium, iron, manganese, copper, recommendations for what you can apply. So I think in the case where people are having declining hay yields, I think this is a wonderful tool to kind of replace all the nutrients that people have been trucking off. All right, next slide, please. All right, so that's the seed when it showed up here in September. And so you come to Soil and Water, which is 2 blocks that way. Next slide. To pick it up, you send a picture like that, and that counts as evidence for getting your $130 per acre. Next slide. And this is what it looked like for somebody in March of 2023. Again, we want it to be like, ideally it would be that big like a month ago or something. But we are constrained by just the timeline of the grant and just the fact that we have to service 100 people and I have to drive around and check out everybody's field, and everybody has a lot of other things to do too. If it's looking like that in March, well, that's better than nothing, but we would like to get it bigger in the fall and get established. So next slide, please. So yeah, maybe that's a little bit bigger. Next slide. I took this picture this morning. I'm pretty sure somebody recognizes this photo. And if anybody wants to talk about it, they're welcome to. This is how it looks. This is great. It was a great start. I kind of peeked over the fence and looked like there's some Ryan vetch growing. I don't know how much else of the mix kind of came up, but this is a great place to be, taking advantage of this warm fall to get growth on. And the bigger it gets in the fall, the bigger it gets in the spring, and the more diverse it gets. The variety's really good at surviving if we plant it really late. The other stuff isn't so much, and we want the diversity, which we'll talk about later. Next slide. Yep, and that's kind of a close-up of it. So, that's a few inches tall at least. And, this was from a couple years ago on a farm I was working for in Santa Fe. We planted that like in August or so, and that's what it looked like maybe in April or May. So it gets big, and which is what we want in the spring, if we plant it earlier. So these are the 5 soil health principles. There's actually 6 of them now. They're on the back of your seed bag, which is really handy as a reminder. I forget what they are all the time. So we'll go through them one by one here pretty quickly. Number 1 is keeping the soil covered through mulch or living plants, preferably living plants. So next slide. And talking about triage again, this is kind of the folks who we have in mind for this program. We want to turn this into something else. So next slide. This is one way of keeping the soil covered through being resourceful with mulch around. Maybe this is like pinon branches or something like that on the hillside. This is utilizing the roller crimper, which the land trust rents out. That's terminating a crop, which we'll talk a little bit more about. This is what you want to think about in the spring. That's one way of doing it. Next slide. Oh, just as a reminder, I mean, yeah, we limit people to 5 acres, but I think this is maybe one of our smaller plots, which I didn't know this place existed. This is a Jewish cemetery in Yonkimato. They have about 4,000 square feet, so we gave them the right amount of seed, and their volunteers are going to help vegetate that because they're growing a lot of Russian thistle and other stuff. So I think I really love that as part of our project too. So we help people, big and small. Next slide. And ultimately, what we're looking to establish is a diverse perennial ground cover, and so they have root systems like this that are really deep. They go up to 16 feet, probably even deeper than that. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, so this is kind of like annual grains like wheat, something like that. This is like wheatgrass, which is just a lot more resilient. So again, talking about our program as a 2-year thing, we want you to be growing something like this in year 2, because this is just too much work, ultimately. We don't want to be seeding annuals every year. Goal would be for next year, even though I truly enjoy everybody that I work with in this program, we want you to move through the program and then be in a place where you don't have to be seeding annual cover crops every year. We want to get you to the point where you're seeding perennials, if that makes sense for you, and just nurturing that in its own way after the program. Next. So kind of more just comparing annual wheat and wheatgrass. This is just a much more resilient thing. This is why we're shooting for this. This taps into moisture much lower. It just survives a lot better by its nature, by it being perennial, and just by its architecture and root system. Next one. And so, again, we're all out of this seed, but this is what we give out to people who are kind of doing year 2 of our program. This is just based on getting feedback from folks that what they recommended, folks who have been growing stuff here for a long time. So it's a mix of alfalfa and a bunch of different cold season grasses. So ryegrass, wheatgrass, fescue, orchard grass, brome, and those are all introduced species, and then bluegrass and Indian rice grass are a couple natives that we put in there. We didn't put more in because they're pretty expensive. So as it stands, this was being seeded at 25 pounds an acre, and it's about $4 a pound for that from Colorado Seed. So that's about all the money we could budget for that. So next one.
So what mix did you get, or are you mixing it yourself?
We have Colorado Seed mix it for us, just custom, and based on how it grows for people, we'd adjust that for next year if we're lucky enough to get the guys again. Oh yeah, and I'm not sure what this is actually. We can go to the next one. Okay, well yeah, can you go back one? So yeah, just to kind of illustrate what we're going for, I think I showed this one last year too. This was somebody who tried sowing some oats, I think in the spring of 2023, and then in the fall, they did our annual program last year, so that's the next slide. That's how it looks in the spring. So people often get discouraged when they find something and it doesn't work. I mean, by and large, we're super reliant on weather. If we get snow, if we get rain, well then the things tend to succeed, and if they don't, then it's a lot harder. So first time around, it didn't work out. Second time around, it was beautiful. And then this person now planted the perennial crop, and then hopefully they'll be done with at least that part of their land. That's kind of a track we're on. All right, aside from that, minimizing soil disturbance is important. We can go to the next one. That's a no-till drill. That's great video driving it. He seeds a lot of people's ground. Next one. Yeah, but I think sometimes tillage gets a bad name unfairly. Sometimes it's the tool to use. We just, spelling no-till with a K-N-O-W, you just have to know when to till or not. So this is from somebody trying to reclaim some sagebrush, and they chose to harrow it before they seeded it, and I think that was a good option. So next one. And I think this is from Will. Will seeded his cover crop last year with this little push earthway seeder, which is how we seeded the one I showed you from Santa Fe a couple years ago. It can be really effective if you have the right scale. Next one. That's just somebody else seeding again with the no-till drill. This was somebody broadcasting and disking it and just, finding a, I don't know if this was custom made or just a 4x4 or 6x6 that they're dragging behind there just to help cover up the seeds, but you can just be creative with what you have. There's a lot more discs around than there are no-till drills, and so they work just fine. So we don't require that you no-till drill. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to you. Next. All right, another soil health principle we're on is maximizing biodiversity. So that's plant biodiversity. You know, the annual mix out about, I don't know, 7 or 8 things. The perennial mix about the same. But we also are looking for biological diversity. So next one. So this is what is pre-mixed in with the seed. And we'll come back to this more later. Next. This is just another example of diversity. That was sandfoin, which is kind of related to alfalfa. It has a similar growth habit, and it's really pretty. And it attracted a lot of gorgeous pollinators. Somebody had planted that in years past, and I saw that on their land last spring, and then we just threw that in the mix because it's so pretty, and it reseeds itself. It kind of acts like a perennial. It's a really awesome plant. Really high in protein. And then as far as inoculants, looking at the biological diversity side of things, this is what we're giving out to people. This comes in a little sandwich bag. It's a little gray powder that you mixed in with your seed. And it's not so obvious now, but this seed got that put on it along with our other compost, because we have kind of a 2-part inoculant, and this didn't get it. And this came up like a day or 2 quicker. It grew more vigorously. It's kind of like it kind of outgrew its pan, so it's kind of like stunting. And this one's kind of catching up maybe a little bit, but it was definitely a noticeable increase in vigor, seedling vigor and size, and from what the claims are for this, it should make your crop grow better and be more drought resilient. So next one.
Tyler, how long ago did you plant those?
Oh yeah, maybe about 10 days ago or so. So if you give it good soil, they got treated the same way. You know, they got the same amount of water. They got brought in at night and put out in the sun during the day. So they got really baby. But you know, if you would have planted before the rains that we got a few weeks ago, they'd probably be that size. And you can kind of come look at this. You can find the other stuff in here like vetch and peas and all the other things. It's kind of fun to look at. So again, our ultimate goal is just imitating nature. Nature is the best teacher. It's much smarter than we all are, and the more we work with it, the better success we're going to have. So I didn't grow up on a farm, or I came to it later in life, but my grandfather did, and I remember him talking about planting these like neon-colored seeds, which was all in vogue at the time. A lot of people plant treated seed. It's treated in a different way from this. This has like fungicide on it. That's why it has this bright color. So like if somebody ate that, like if your kid ate it, then you should take them to the emergency room right away because it's poisonous. It kind of eliminates all life. And what we're trying to do is provide beneficial life to the seed as it's getting started. If you think about little baby animals or little baby humans, obviously that's the most fragile time of their life is at the beginning. And the more they get everything they need during those crucial periods, they're going to be happier in the short term and in the long term. So that's what we're trying to do with the plants. There we go. Case in point, a little baby cow getting colostrum from its mother. And obviously, it could get it directly from its mother as well, but I thought it was a little risque showing that on a wall. And this is a little bit more PG. That was my attempt at a joke. Next. All right. So in the mix of powders here, what we have, amongst other things, is mycorrhizal fungi. Again, my grandfather's generation, fungus is a bad thing. We don't want it at all. We understand that there are gobs and gobs of beneficial fungi. Some of them are what are called mycorrhizal. Myco is fungus, rhizal roots. And what they do is have a symbiotic relationship with the plant that makes these nutrients present in the soil accessible to the plant. So they, actually go inside the root cell, set up shop, and put out these hyphae, and can convert these into usable nutrients for the plant. So it's really magical, and all your seed is inoculated with that. Next slide, please. And so this is what the manufacturer of BioCo Gold submits as evidence that their stuff works. This is 20 pounds of it for the 280 acres. I measure it out with a gram scale based on what your acreage is, so you get the right amount. This costs about $1,000, which is crazy, but it's really good stuff. And so this is like untreated wheat seed. This is, again, we're talking about not fungicide. I'm sorry. This one didn't have the seed treatment on it, and so you can kind of see the wispy, thready roots. And this one, on the roots, you kind of see what that previous picture showed, which is those fungal hyphae kind of going out, grabbing soil particles. And then this is kind of at a later stage, you pick that up and you realize, there's a lot going on here that we can't see. But obviously something's going on there. And so what people term that is like a rhizosheathing. So again, rhizos roots sheathing is like a sheath, like a knife sheath around the root. And that creates a small little microenvironment. We can go to the next slide. That makes things much more resilient to drought, because it kind of traps water in there, it traps nutrients. It's an interface in between the plant roots and the microbiological community, and it's like a little home for them. And so this tends to happen more when we inoculate with things. So again, like I mentioned, in the green cover seed bag, it's inoculated at the factory. It's a wonderful company. They actually offer this now. They didn't offer this as a seed treatment when I applied for the grant and when I ordered the seed. They just started doing it about 2 months ago, and this is the product they chose to do. So, and they are responsible for providing seed for about over 1 million acres in the U.S. of cover crop seed. So, I think we picked a good product. And so in the spring, this is rye plants from people that planted in the fall. So again, even the seed treatment they put in last year's crop, we have this effect. I mean, it's called rhizosheathing or dreadlocks roots. And so that's ideally what we want to see when we pull them up, because then we know that these are strong plants that are really ready for anything. If it's kind of dry, they're going to be able to weather that much better than these ones. These all got the same seed treatment. I don't know why these ones didn't get this, but it was really kind of fascinating to see. That's just more of this, just another illustration of this. This is what we're going for in the plants that we grow. Next one. Yeah, this is just the early days of the experiment. You can kind of tell this is more vigorous. This is the treated one. This is the untreated one. Same deal, treated one. Just a lot more even germination. I watered them all the same. This one's a little more spotty and less vigorous. And aside from the BioCo Gold, we give you this compost, which is here. And this is a fungally dominated compost. Talking more about fungus. That's produced over the border in Colorado by Dave West, who based his method of making compost on this idea. And this is like a New Mexico invention. That's David Johnson, who I think taught at NMSU, and came up with this as like a way of making compost that really developed a lot of the fungus, which again have kind of superpowers more or less. Next one. And so that's his system up there. He grows these in a couple of high tunnels. There's actually this like drill here that like drills these air holes to like aerate it. It's really cool. So we got about, he gave us some extra. It's actually a little, it's not sifted very well, and I wanted people to be able to put it through seeders, and I actually heard somebody complain today that it jammed up their seeder. But I hand sifted, like 2,400 pounds of it to try and make it in a useful form for people. But I don't know. This is all an experiment, and we're working on it, so I want to hear feedback if people had any trouble with it. Next slide. And the whole reason, I guess I kind of heard about him making this, and he, saw that little Johnson Sioux bioreactor. Somebody came up to the San Luis Valley, which is where he's based, and taught people how to make that, and he's like, this is ridiculous. Like, it's like the size of that trash can, like, what am I going to, I have hundreds of acres. Like, so he came up with this scaled up version, which I think is really cool. And so I was up in San Luis Valley looking at somebody's alfalfa field for another job I have, and they were using this. This is his company, Fungal Link. So what they do is they just put it through their pivot. He doesn't really care if it's really chunky and blocky. He doesn't sift it. He just puts it in here and soaks it in water and applies it through a pivot, and it was a really beautiful alfalfa field that he had. Next slide. So that's where I got kind of the idea from to use it, and thankfully the grant paid for it. So here again, if you go back to or we don't have to go back to the slide. If you recall, my picture of me paying $85 for 25 pounds of seed. Again, this is a way of making this usable to people. We can experiment, and you don't have to pay for it. You just have to, provide your time and the willingness to be a lab rat. But oh, that was good. That was good for the cameras. But in any case, nobody's probably going to buy a $1,000 bag of that, but thankfully we can all utilize it. So that's his field there. It's really pretty on Belgium. Next slide. So yeah, somebody, one of our participants is real keen on soil microscopy, probably didn't say that right, but using a microscope to look at seeing what things are alive in something like our compost here. And so I'm looking forward to talking with her more about that. This is a fungal hyphae strand as far as I know. We can go forward. Some more of that stuff. I'm really looking forward to learning about all this because I know nothing about it, and this is an amoeba, if I'm correct. So there's this whole world of beneficial microbes that carry a lot of the weight of making plants grow, and it's just good to be aware of this. That's me making compost like the old-fashioned way. This was like in 2020, and I think I was wearing a mask because I didn't want to get a bunch of particulate matter in my face, but it's also during COVID. Not that I was around anybody, but this is kind of the traditional windrow way of making a compost, and that just really churns everything up, and that kind of destroys all those fungal hyphae strands. And so again, we're imitating nature, but if we think about the forest floor, that's a really fertile source of fungus and mushrooms and all this kind of amazing things, and that doesn't really get turned up at all. So again, knowing when to disturb things and when to not is always a question. So next picture. And yeah, minimizing soil disturbance when we have earthworms, important too. This is from somebody's field, somebody's really pretty field in Cuesta. There's probably 20 earthworms in a shovelful there. And we weren't helping them with their field. With this particular field, we were helping them with one of their non-irrigated areas that needed some annual cover crop. Next one. All right, maintaining a living root. Next one. So yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. That's dormant at that stage. But that's what it does. It holds the soil together. A lot of times when I'm coming out and collecting soil samples, the soil just kind of falls apart. So it's not just the roots, it's all the microbes that we don't see that are also holding everything together. And that's the most kind of resilient sort of soil that we want. Next one. Back to alfalfa. All right, living roots, perennial. All right, the fifth soil health principle is integrating livestock. So that's really important because a lot of the land here is kind of managed. We have a lot of irrigated livestock pasture and non-irrigated rangeland that livestock are on. And so doing that well is a really challenging thing. Next slide. But there's people that do it. This was from this summer, I believe. Angel Fire, some Sean Howard and Pat Pacheco collaborate on this Sean's land out there, and it's Pat's cows. And you notice there's no animals in the picture, right? Because that's probably how it should look most of the year. It's just introducing livestock, letting the plants express themselves and rest. And Sean started out drilling with seed at that place. It was kind of barren and less than ideal, and now it looks really amazing. And so he started introducing seed early on, and now his drill kind of sits in the shed. So, and this is just a different frame of the animals there. They're there for maybe 2 or 3 days in that paddock. It's a really high stocking density. They're getting really great results, and it's incredible to see positive examples like this. Next one. This is when I was working for a farm and we had chickens. Kind of, if you think back to that previous photo, changing the way you manage livestock. This is about cover cropping, but this is kind of thinking ahead of next steps. It changes the animal's behavior. When we got these poults, these are egg-laying hens, we had a few hundred of them, they did not want to go outside at all. They would just huddle under their little mobile chicken coop. And we had to train them for 2 weeks of shooing them out, making them go out and eat things, because they had grown the first 12 weeks of their life just in confinement, like most chickens they were raised. And then they turned into little dinosaurs that just, decimated anything green you would put in front of them. I never took a picture of something I'll describe to you, but one time we were growing like a summer cover crop, was like millet and other things, so like the seed that it developed was like up at like my, I don't know, probably like my waist level, realistically. Because like I went out in the evening, we locked them up every night into their mobile coop, so they were safe from predators, but all like 200 plus chickens were jumping and like grabbing the seeds that had developed, you know, like 3 feet off the ground, like they were NBA basketball players. Like I would never have thought that was possible. But it's amazing how smart animals are if we allow them to be smart, if we provide a challenge for them, and as long as there's good human management of those animals to achieve their greatest potential. So this is just like a 2-species cover crop, like crimson clover and beech. This is from Virginia. It's so easy to grow cover crops in Virginia. It's a lot harder to do out here. But again, this just gives you a sense of what is possible using one type of livestock. Same thing here. They're just going crazy for radishes, and oats and peas. All right. What's next? All right. So I guess the 6th soil health principle is just knowing your own context. All these rules are kind of maybe bent and broken based on what works for you and what's unique to you. And maybe at the end here, we're getting close to the end. We'll just talk about some challenges of things that we haven't really figured out yet. And part of that is just these, when we have existing ground cover that we want to convert into something else. I mean, so many people want to change sagebrush into something else. A lot of people have this perennial crested wheatgrass. We saw those roots earlier, right? They're going down 20 feet. Those plants don't want to go anywhere. They're incredible survivors, but it's really hard to get them to grow alongside them. And then also smooth brome. That was actually in our perennial mix. It grows here. It's great because of that. But it tends to take over. So next slide. Yeah, so this is rare Chiletta and Alejandro Carrillo, I mentioned earlier. This is out on the vast sagebrush plain. Really looking at the sagebrush, and this was a really fascinating conversation to hear what their thoughts on it were. Alejandro's like, oh, this is no problem, give me 8 years, and this will be like wayside grass or something. I believe him. I think he sent some donkeys to this place to try and help them work towards that. And I'm not sure the status of that now. But we were kind of just like looking at the microenvironment of the sagebrush. I remember we were talking to somebody on the phone here, and maybe I told you some of you this, but again, relying on people's memories of what life is like previous to the way it is now. She was like, oh, we didn't have a Walmart to buy potting soil. We would just go with a shovel and dig the soil under the sagebrush, which was the best soil. And it is really good soil. It's like a forest. Like if you look under those plants, it's actually really highly functioning soil. Those plants are doing positive things. But they don't support a whole lot of life. People are trying to raise cattle and other things. It's just not enough nutrition, so we have to introduce other species. And we're working on this. A lot of people, choose to bulldoze it or, use some other sort of softer means of letting the sage grow a little bit. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have a solution to how to do this. Next slide. But I went to some presentation a couple weeks ago down south, and somebody was, some professor was working on this. They called them fertility islands, which I thought was a really interesting way of thinking about it, because that's what they are. But even, they were having a lot of difficulty getting other species established too. So that remains to be figured out, I guess. So this is, somebody's, I wish I had the other 2 pictures that went along with this, because they actually had pictures from like a balloon that had taken a picture of their land. I think this was in 2022, the year we had a really wet monsoon season, and they planted like a summer cover crop, and it went gangbusters and looked amazing. And now, 3 years later, or 2 years later, you can still see kind of the remnants of this millet. It's just kind of fossilized there. It's just there wasn't enough moisture to kind of keep the cycle going. So yeah, you can plant things like this, and then you kind of can run out of steam. So, but it was really amazing to see this. There was somebody in our program who had sagebrush, and I was like, I don't know what to tell you. But then she actually raises sheep, in a different state of all places, and then she kind of got linked up with somebody. This just happened yesterday with some folks who moved their sheep around, and she's like, I'm talking with them, and I think I'm gonna, have their sheep come to my land, and hopefully we could turn it into something like this, where there's more grass growing in between the sagebrush. Next one. Yeah, this is like crested wheat. Again, this amazing survivor. It greens up a couple times during the year and then sits dormant because it's too hot or too dry, but it survives. And it's really hard to get stuff seeded into there. And this might be a case where tilling is the right option. Herbicides are options too. It all depends on your comfort level with those tools. I'm not sure what that is. We can go to the next one. Okay, yeah, that was the nice placing pest I was talking about, with all the earthworms. Yeah, that's what we're looking for, infiltration test under 10 seconds. Nice, diverse, beautiful soil structure, looks like chocolate cake. Incidentally, they are getting declining hay yields too, so we're going to work with their soil test results to see if they're missing something. So you can get all that stuff right and still not get the outcome you're going for. So it's a long-term thing. Next one. And yeah, if anybody knows anything about this, hydroseeding, I'm really interested in that. I don't know how expensive that is or what, but I think we always have to be asking questions whether what we're doing makes the most sense for every circumstance. So who knows? Next one. Yeah, and then as far as I know, the structure of the Healthy Soil Program is going to change to be a little more year-round, which is really great because it might allow us to take advantage of monsoon moisture a little more. And one of my co-workers at Soil and Water planted this spring cover crop and had really good results. She's in the Rio Hondo watershed, which has a lot more water than a lot of other places, and we see a lot of different expressions of the crops there because they just have more water. So that comes with a caveat, but this is a purple top turnip, and her yard is just covered with giant turnips right now from planting in the spring. And it was a really diverse, nice, flowering mustard in the back, some millet. We can go to the next one. That's the millet. That's what, if you can imagine chickens jumping up and eating that. I saw that with my own eyes. Next one. All right. Yeah, so, I showed you that picture of the sagebrush with a little building in it. If somebody wouldn't have planted something in there in 2020, they wouldn't have known what was possible. So, if you don't plant anything, then you're not going to get any results. At the same time, I just want to challenge everybody's, well, if you have the assumption, like I have had in the past, and still do, that seeding is the right thing to do. There's all these other things you can do that aren't cover cropping, So, planting fence posts and, grazing wisely can have wonderful results as well. It maybe takes longer in a way, but that's an option as well. I think that's all I had. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have brome in that mix of perennials. That brome will kind of overtake the rest, and we have a lot of fields out there that have the smooth brome, and it chokes everything else out.
Yeah, so it's about 10% brome. I'm kind of hoping that it can kind of go coexist.
Different varieties of brome that.
There are different ones, I was just kind of basing, that list on people like, some of your neighbors and other folks who manage other people's land and, cover many dozens of acres and have so much experience, and that was kind of their go-to. There's plenty of people who ask specifically, oh, that mix doesn't have brome in it, right? So yeah, it's one of those things. I think you're kind of playing with fire in a regard, as long as you know you are. Yeah, we put it in as a small percentage, and we're just hoping that if we have those other things established with it, that it's not going to take over. But who knows? We might not include it in the future. But the thing is, yeah, again, the good thing about it is it's just does so well here. And even when it's like 100% brome, I've seen cases where, again, it's a highly functioning soil, really good soil tilt, really good infiltration. And if that's what it takes, maybe it's not such a bad thing. Anybody else?
Can you get more biocoat gold and include that as part of a wider program by any chance, for general vegetable growers? And is that something you're thinking about at all? And how about also the other product, seed player? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I would really like to try that too. And I think over time, we'll end up spending a lot more money on inoculants and relatively amount of seed, because I think hopefully they have results. Again, we'll see how things look in the spring when people's crops come up, and we'll see if there's a difference and all that sort of thing. But yeah, it gets applied at about 20 grams an acre, so kind of like a drug dealer, I could probably get you half a gram or something for your garden or something, Yep.
Are you doing the bio goals with every crop or every,
Yeah,
did I get some?
you should have, and if you didn't, then I can, but it's in a really small
It
little
must be
sandwich
down.
bag with gray powder.
I just have a brown bag of the compost, which is what I looked at.
Okay, it wasn't in there?
I didn't look.
Okay, it might be hiding in there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So mine was-
did you have a question?
Yeah, is there some kind of consensus in switching from your annual to your perennial as to what time? Is it like
Yeah, that's a
late
good question.
spring,
Yeah,
midsummer?
that's a great question. This is the first year we've done a perennial. We actually had to get, because of the way New Mexico laws are, there was some concern that we couldn't give people perennial crops as a soil and water district because we're taxpayer funded. But we got permission from our lawyer to do so. So I guess there's a kind of reason why they hadn't done it in the past, because they were concerned about it, that was somehow illegal. But we got that permission, and then I don't know. There's so many things I don't know, and if people have any knowledge about when the best time to establish that is, the way I look at it is just that if we look at the longest kind of extended period with consistent soil moisture, it's just going to be in the fall, going into the winter, and into the early spring. So, we're just trying to take advantage of that window. But, we tried doing this spring seed program this past spring, and people just didn't have time for it. People are busy cleaning ditches and doing so many other things. It was kind of unsuccessful. So that's kind of the challenge here, I think, about trying to time things in the spring. People are just, getting their fields ready, and it's hard for them to find time to seed. But yeah, I don't know that necessarily our 2-year program makes all the sense in the world. I'm kind of basing this on what other people have had success with. Buck Johnson, who's one of our contractors, advises a lot of people, and that was kind of his system of getting just annuals that flush out weeds and get the soil primed and get it growing something desirable, and then you can switch to perennials. But it's about the same amount per acre, about $100 a seed per acre, more or less, either way. So, and some people will throw in perennials with their annuals as they're seeding it, and that's, you can add whatever you want to the seed mix we give you. Some people throw in wildflowers, they really want that. So that's always an option too. Yeah?
So can people use the Healthy Soils Program to fund the perennial seed that maybe they want to integrate, as well as the nutrients that they could apply?
Are you talking about like individual applicants?
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
entities.
Yeah. I've really seen the most success in entities. So, like acequias, I think the system is really well designed for acequias. You're already cooperating with one another, and you kind of know who has all the equipment. You're already a pre-existing group, which is really great. But yeah, you can apply for all these things: annual seed, perennial seed, livestock fencing, all these things that are justifiably healthy soil practices that follow like the 5 principles. You don't have to follow all of them at once. So again, I'm always available if you want to apply for that. Things quiet down for me in the winter, and I like helping people with those applications. It'd be great to see more money coming into our community doing this.
We'll throw a little water in your products.
Yeah, I
I did the 5 acre,
Uh-huh.
and I used your fertilizer.
Yeah.
As we all know, all seeders work in a sprocket. They only allow a certain amount of seeds to drop, and that seed has to be a certain size. Your fertilizer has stands, stakes, and things like that. After I did the 5 acres, I still had 1/3 of the product still in the hopper. The seeds plugged the holes going down, the sprockets are not able to fisher it down to where it's supposed to go. So I'm mad.
Yeah, and,
I have to redo those, I have to redo that.
for sure. And I feel awful about that, and, I was, you know, so, yeah, Dave West gave us 2,400 pounds of compost. We were supposed to get 800 pounds, and it was kind of chunky, so he gave us more. And then I, again, hand sifted it, and I was hoping that it was sifted fine enough, you know, but I apologize for that. So it's one of these things, when you try new things, gosh, we end up having problems like this, and I'm sorry that happened to you, I really know.
It's my fault, you know.
Oh, no.
I know enough about drill seed, I've done it plenty of times, and I have that problem happen with those, when you get those stems in the oats that aren't
Yeah,
clean.
yeah.
So I should have just put it through a screen and removed out all that extra size, but I didn't do it, I wanted to, get all of it.
Yeah, so,
It took me about 4 hours and a half more to redo the field.
so, that's the good thing about having these meetings, you know, a whole bunch of people just heard you, so, thanks for sharing that, and I'm sorry about that.
So if you're planning it, make sure that you screen it.
Yeah,
I gotta say, it works fine in the land trust drill. I did it yesterday, and it worked fine.
Yeah, it'll work fine on the broadcast. I mean, it's fantastic.
No, this was a
When you're
drill.
seeding it, and you have to mix it in with that real fine seed, and you got those little stems in there, and those stems don't want to go through your sprocket. It fills up that particular sprocket, and that section didn't get any, and you probably went for about 2 hours without any going into that particular section. So it's a little frustrating.
yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, again, going forward, I'm learning from your feedback, and I don't know if this is the way we go next time with that compost, but,
We'll find out next year.
sure.
I did the spring cover crop seeding, Buck Johnson came out,
Yeah,
and I irrigated heavy on a portion of it, acequia, and then some of it I irrigated not as heavy. I mean, when I'm saying heavy, there's probably a couple inches of standing water over where, and some was not irrigated at all, and I got zero growth. And I'm just wondering, do I do it again next year, or will those seeds stay dormant? And I mean,
yeah, so those aren't like winter hardy seeds, so, yeah, you know, this happens to some people, and, you know, I would just kind of refer back to that slide of, you know, the cover crop that's not really working out for that person, and then she had like the most beautiful stand. Next year, I think it's try again. So, you know, we're trying to make this program, again, nobody likes wasting their time, but, you know, anytime you plant a seed, it's just not guaranteed to grow. I've had tons of cover crop failures.
if I did the fall cover crop, would that possibly help the spring cover crop down the road? I mean,
Well, yeah, well, it'll grow into the summer next year, you know, the annuals and stuff. So, yeah, it's just, we had a lot of people who we didn't have enough seed, you know. For people last year, we, you know, still planted over 200 acres and had over 100 people participate, but that's why we did the spring one, because we still had some grant money and we just wanted to use it up, wanted to put seeds in people's hand and try spring seeding, but I wouldn't focus on spring seeding again. There just wasn't successful enough. I showed you those pictures of like the millet and the purple bell turnips, you know, where somebody had a lot of water and it worked out for that one person. By and large, it was kind of not very successful, so,
okay.
yeah. So again, you're all kind of lab rats, whether you realize it or not. But we always try to and change the program just so we're really increasing the odds of everybody's success. But it's, you know, it's one of those things. Failures are wonderful learning opportunities. It just sucks when it's your land.
How many, we'll put on the poll here, how many plots of people are here?
So there's more than people who are trying to grow sagebrush in non-irrigated places. You know.
Was there any success?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. Very successful. There's a lot of effort here. Not very good. But thanks so much for being a great audience. drop off your evaluations, which helps TCEDC. And yeah, I really enjoy seeing the land and working with Jim, so I'm always open for any more questions, or just give me a call. Talk to me now.
Good.